Hello, everybody. My name is Ginger Gaines Sorelli. I am coming to you today live. I'm live after a couple of weeks of pre-recorded messages. I was doing a little work a couple of weeks ago, and last week had a bit of time away with family. And today I'm here with you live, I have to say. So I'm waiting to invite some people in to join me. I hope some folk will come alongside today. As we're kind of gathering ourselves in, I'll share two things. One, on my screen, I seem to be jumping around a little bit today. I'm hoping that we don't run into any major issues. But the other thing I want to share is just how different it feels to be live with you in this space. I'm glad that we have a way to record and to keep the consistency going. And so even when I'm unavailable to do the live stream on Wednesday at noon, that's great. But I just realize how much better it feels to see all of you joining me right now. So I say hi to Ann and Eddie and Matthew and Sarah and Donald, Michael, Chris. It's good to see you as we're gathering ourselves into this community. I'm so glad to see all of you today. And I'm also all of a sudden realizing that my computer looks like it's getting low. So there we go. We're going to be live, and if I get a ding that tells me we're low, I'll be right back. Hi, everybody. So today I want to welcome you. I'll just say that again. Welcome. Welcome to the Purple Parlor of my home here in Washington, D.C. I'm the senior pastor at Foundry United Methodist Church, and it is my delight to welcome you into this space for some time of reflection today. Yeah, you know what? Before I get into it, I'm going to plug in. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm getting there. The new setup, occasionally there's a new setup, and I have to adjust. There we go. Yes, and she's back. Sorry about that, everybody. So here's what I'm thinking about today. If you have been connecting with Foundry over the time of this pandemic since March or so, we've been using a hashtag to help kind of track our connection, and the hashtag is "This is how I Foundry." And it may seem sort of like a quirky thing, but I have just come to so appreciate it for a number of reasons. And the one I want to talk about today is that it makes Foundry into a verb. It makes Foundry into a verb. And that is really appropriate for so many ways, in so many ways, and for so many reasons. So often we think about church. Of course, I've said this, and we've talked about it here and there. We think of church as a place. And over we've been reminded through these months that our forced physical distance has reminded us that the church is not just the place, as we learned in that song, it's the people. And it's also not static. Church is action, church is activity, church is a verb. Foundry is a verb. Foundry is not just a place that we go. It's a beautiful place, a place we love to gather, our building, our space at 16th and P. But Foundry is not just a place that we go. Foundry is something that we do. It's something that we are together. And this is, as I said, it's very appropriate to think about our faith community in this way, as activity, as action, as a verb, not a noun, not a static thing, but active and moving and engaging. All of our life of faith really is that. And so oftentimes I think we try to put things in a little static box, something that we can hold. And Paul says in the beautiful chapter we call the love chapter, at the end, he says, faith, hope, and love abide, but the greatest of these is love. And each one of those great gifts of our spiritual tradition, faith, hope, and love, are all really verbs. Faith, we think about faith. I'm not going to, of course, go deep into any of this today. I just want us to sort of think about the dynamic nature of our faith. Because, think about it right now. In many ways, we are much more still than we have been. We are not, again, able to go to the place that we tend to associate with church or with our faith and to gather as we're used to gathering. And so I just want us to think about this whole thing as activity, about the way that things are active and moving, even when we are in a place of greater stillness, many of us, than we're used to. So when we think about faith, the sort of bedrock of spiritual life, one of the things that we say when we talk about faith is that it's a leap. That's one of the ways we talk about it. You make a leap of faith. It is something that you do. I would like to suggest that you have to make a choice. And not just one choice. It's not one day you decide, oh, I think I'll have faith. And then you have it forever. You've made the choice. Faith is a daily re-up. Faith requires this sort of constant choosing again, surrendering again, leaping again. One of my favorite images for the activity of faith is that scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark. No, not Raiders of the Lost Ark. The second one. Anyway, the scene where Indiana Jones, somebody out there, who can tell me? I can't see the real-time comments. Someone can tell me maybe which movie that was. It was Indiana Jones, and he was trying to get in to save his dad. So it was, Anyway, so he comes up to the chasm, and he's looking for the Grail. And he's done all these sort of things. He had to sort of figure out all the tricks in the cave. It's all booby-trapped. And he comes to the edge, and it's this just ridiculous chasm. And the notes basically say you step out into the chasm. And so it's that great scene where he, puts his foot up and then steps, and lo and behold, there was an optical illusion, and there's a path that's there that could not be seen until you stepped on it and felt it to cross over. And I love that image of the activity of faith, having to make a choice, having to know what it is you're trying to get to, or who you're trying to connect with and why, and then taking a step, a leap. So the activity of faith, the movement, the verb of faith. It's not just a bunch of words in a book. It's not just dogma or doctrine, though those things can help describe what it's like, the experience or the path. It's an activity daily, moment to moment of faith. And hope, the way I talked about hope a little bit a few weeks back and connected it with this idea of practice and practicing resurrection. And for me, that's kind of one of the ways that I think about the activity, the verb of hope. And it's, closely connected to faith in many ways. But specifically, I think about, we hope for this thing that has been promised. We hope for life. And in the spiritual life, in the Christian tradition, which really is a very incarnate version of many other spiritual traditions, which have this cycle of life, birth, life, growth, death, and rebirth, renewal. It's that cycle. And in the Christian faith, we see that cycle literally played out in the person of Jesus, this sort of embodiment of that promise of new life and resurrection. But it means that hope is being willing to continually go to the cross, go into the tomb, and hoping for that new life, trusting in that new life. Again, faith and hope, I see them anyways, very closely related. But it's an activity, and it's a practice. We practice hope. It takes practice. And in these days, mercy, mercy, mercy. Sometimes it can feel very, very difficult to hope, actively to hope. And yet that really is so much at the heart of what we're invited and given grace to try to do. Because without it, life is harder. No, life is hard even with hope. I take that back. But hope helps us keep going. And it helps us do the hard work of continuing to choose faith. I've often said that we hope in the future because we know what God has done in the past. And so our faith in a God who is good and who's been with us and sustains us, our continual choosing of that, to follow, to trust God, then allows us to hope, actively practice resurrection, because we know that God is in the habit of bringing new life, even in the times that are just awful. And so faith and hope, and then, Paul says the greatest is love. Now, many of y'all have probably been to weddings where you'll hear the homily preached about how love isn't just a feeling, it's something you do. Well, that's true. And that's what I'm talking about. But I think a lot of times even that kind of wisdom can get really, watered down in some kind of way, so that, love as an action doesn't really require that much of us. And the kind of love that we're called to do is to be more and more perfected in the love that Jesus embodied. And that's hard. It's active, and it requires a lot from us. I recently, one of the books that I read in the last couple of months is this one. I'm going to highly recommend it. It's not a book that takes forever to read. It's a memoir, so it's, it reads like a story. It is so deep and has so much wisdom, and I learned a lot reading this book. It's called I'm Still Here, Black Dignity in a World Made for Whiteness by Austin Channing Brown. And in one of the last chapters, maybe the last chapter, she talks about love and the way that we Christians talk about love. And I thought I would share a little bit from her words from her book on this idea of love, and to really put it in context in our current conversation around systemic racism, because it helps just kind of put a little bit of meat on the bones of this conversation about love not being just a feeling, but action, something that we do. So this is what she says. She says, Christians talk about love a lot. It's one of our favorite words, especially when the topic is race. If we could just learn to love one another. Love trumps hate. Love someone different from you today. Nice little bumper stickers, That's me. Anyway, she goes on to say, but I have found this love to be largely inconsequential. More often than not, my experience has been that whiteness sees love as a prize it is owed, rather than a moral obligation it must demonstrate. Love for whiteness dissolves into a demand for grace, for niceness, for endless patience, to keep everyone feeling comfortable while hearts are being changed. I'm going to pause there. I think that is so true in my experience, this idea that we love people by not making them uncomfortable. We love people by being so keyed in to their feelings of discomfort that we don't go the next step perhaps that we need to take. She goes on to say, in this way, so-called love dodges any responsibility for action and waits for the great catalytic moment that finally spurs accountability. I'm not interested in love that is aloof, in a love that refuses hard work, instead demanding a bite-sized education that doesn't transform anything, in a love that qualifies the statement Black Lives Matter because it's unconvinced this is true. I am not interested in a love that refuses to see systems and structures of injustice, preferring to ask itself only about personal intentions. This aloof kind of love is useless to me. I'm going to pause again. An aloof love is not the kind of love that Jesus embodied. I want to make that connection really clearly. The love that Jesus embodied was incarnate, it was risky, it was vulnerable, it was active, it was putting himself on the line with and for those who were victims, those who couldn't love themselves, those who were not loved by others, those who were, and when I say love, I mean cared for concretely. Aloof love is useless. She says, I agree, and I think it's borne out in Jesus' life that she's right. She goes on to say, and then I'll read this paragraph and then that will be it. She says, I need a love that is troubled by injustice, a love that is provoked to anger when Black folks, including our children, lie dead in the street, a love that can no longer be concerned with tone because it is concerned with life. A love that has no tolerance for hate, no excuses for racist decisions, no contentment in the status quo. I need a love that is fierce in its resilience and sacrifice. I need a love that chooses justice. Again, that's Austin Channing Brown. I recommend I'm Still Here, Black Dignity in a World Made for Whiteness. It's a good, very concrete example of how love, even when we're saying that we're doing something with it, how it can still really be very inconsequential. And what we're called to is love as a verb, as an action that actually makes a difference, that is life-giving, that is justice-making. And I think that for me is part of the core action of real love. And not, a lot of times, again, just to be clear, we often think of justice as the thing that happens when you need to punish someone. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about restorative activity. Love that is restorative to the balance and the way of life that provides for all. Activity and choices that are what is it, meet and right, just, faith as a leap, a choice and a leap. Hope is the practice of resurrection that's willing to continually go to the cross and tomb as we seek to step into new life and to the promise of a good God. And love that is always seeking to do justice, to care, inconsequential ways, incarnate ways, risky ways, sacrificial ways. The faith that we profess as we seek to try to follow Jesus, the truly human one, is a verb. It's a way of life, not a place, not a book, not beautiful, even just beautiful words. It is a way of life. It is an integrated, holistic way of being in the world. It's a verb, daily action. So that means that no matter where we are, no matter how physically distant we are, we can practice and move together in these ways and rhythms of faith, hope, and love that are put into practice in real and consequential activity. And that's good news as we stare down the rest of 2020 and know that it's very likely that we will not be back in our physical space at Foundry for many months. And yet we continue to be spiritually connected, to be the church, to be people of the way of Jesus Christ. We continue to Foundry together, to do and to be who we are called to be and to do what we are called to do, and that's really what it's about. So those are my thoughts. Those are my thoughts today. A few things to ponder, and I hope it's a blessing. If this time, when we gather is helpful, I do hope you'll invite others to join us, that you pass along, share this or others of our pastors who are sharing each and every day here, Monday through Friday, on Facebook Live. We want to be with you, and I'm so grateful to be able to share with all of you. Thanks for coming alongside today. Again, it's great to be back with you live, and I hope you will stay connected and take good care of yourselves in these days. And I'll be preaching again on Sunday. We've been so blessed by our clergy team over these last number of weeks, 5 weeks. And I'll be back in the pulpit, so to speak, the pulpit in my guest room, my cozy chair. I hope you'll join us. Let's pray. Loving God, we give you thanks for giving us grace, coming alongside and helping us continue to choose faith, to practice hope, and to love in ways that make your love real in consequential ways in the world. Continue to help us, O God, to remain connected to you and to one another. Strengthen us for the living of these days. Help us to continue to Foundry, to church, to truly live the way that is the way of Jesus. Amen. Thanks again. May peace dwell in your hearts, my beloveds. And may you know at the very core of your being the liberating power of God's love for you. I hope to see you next time.